The war had lasted 300 years, and Lyanna Silvermoon was tired of running. She stood on top of the tallest tower of her home planet and watched the sky burn with enemy fire. The Krethok had come to destroy everything she loved, and they were winning. Lyanna had silver hair that moved in the hot wind and violet eyes that had seen too much death. Below her, the forests of Velrithia were burning, and the cities were falling one by one. Her people were dying, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. Beside her was Azrath, her dragon companion. He was massive with scales that looked like the night sky filled with stars. His wings were so large they could cover entire buildings when he spread them wide. Azrath and Lyanna shared a special bond that let them feel each other's thoughts and emotions. Right now, Azrath felt angry and sad because their world was ending. The dragon spoke inside her mind without using words. They will break through our last shield before the sun sets, and our fleet is scattered across the stars. We are alone now, and the other worlds have stopped answering our calls for help. Lyanna looked at the holographic screens floating in the air around her. They showed red symbols spreading across blue ones like a disease. Each red symbol was an enemy ship, and each blue one was her people defending their homes. The blue symbols were disappearing faster than she could count. The elven people had ruled this part of space for 50,000 years. They had built great cities and learned powerful magic and created beautiful art, but now the Krethok were eating through their civilization like insects through wood. The enemy bred faster than any species Lyanna had ever seen. They adapted to every weapon and every strategy. They did not negotiate or show mercy. They only consumed and destroyed and moved on to the next world. Lyanna suddenly remembered something she had read in the ancient archives, the human texts that nobody had finished translating because they seemed unimportant. Humans were a primitive species from a distant planet called Earth. 700 years ago, they had sent messages into space with their music and mathematics. Then they went silent, and nobody knew why. The Krethok had sent 3 different fleets to invade the human home system. None of those fleets ever came back. Not one ship, and not one signal. It was like they had simply vanished into nothing. Azrath. We never finished reading those old files about the humans, Lyanna said as another explosion shook the tower beneath her feet. What if there is something important in them? The dragon turned his massive head toward her with golden eyes that glowed in the firelight. Those texts are about primitives who barely left their own planet before they died out. What could they possibly teach us now, when we are about to be destroyed? Lyanna worked the controls in front of her with quick fingers. She pulled up files that had been stored for centuries and forgotten. One document caught her attention immediately. It was written in the language of the first ones who had created life across the galaxy millions of years ago. The first ones had made the dragons before even the elves learned to speak. They had seeded countless worlds with different species and then disappeared without explanation. The text was short, but it made Lyanna's heart beat faster. When darkness devours hope and despair, claims the stars seek the blue world of the persistent primates. But heed this warning, child of the eternal, never underestimate Earth. Azrath felt her excitement through their bond and read the words through her eyes. I remember something now from my ancestors' memories. The first ones told the dragons to never interfere with that world, but they also said that in our darkest hour, Earth would matter somehow. The tower shook again, and part of the wall collapsed into fire. Lyanna grabbed onto a railing to keep from falling. Around them, the city was dying, and their people were screaming. She made a decision that would change everything. Gather every ship that can still fly and every person we can save. We are going to Earth, and we are bringing the Krethok with us. Azrath pulled back in surprise and confusion. That is madness, Lyanna. If the humans are dead, we will be leading our enemies to an empty grave. We will all die there with no hope of escape. Lyanna had experienced a strange dream 3 nights ago. In that dream, she saw a world covered in blue oceans and green land. She heard voices speaking in a language she did not understand, but somehow knew the meaning. The voices said, "We won the war because we always do, and humanity does not quit." She shared this memory with Azrath through their bond. The Ancient One does not give warnings without reason. If they said to never underestimate Earth, then maybe the Krethok found something terrible there. Maybe they did not find an extinct species. Maybe they found humans who had 700 years to prepare for the next invasion. Azrath was quiet for a long moment as he thought about her words. For the Krethok finding prepared humans would be worse than finding nothing at all. Lyanna climbed onto the dragon back, and their minds merged deeper. Below them, the first evacuation ships were lifting off with flames still burning on their hulls. Of the 1,000,000 people who lived on Velrythia, only 40,000 would escape. The rest would die in the next few hours when the planet fell. Lyanna sent out a command to every ship captain on every frequency. Set course for the Sol system and the third planet called Earth. We go there now, and we bring our enemy with us. If we must die, let it be there where the Ancient One made their warning. Behind them, the Krethok fleet moved forward like a dark tide. Their bioships pulsed with disgusting life as they bred new warriors even while traveling through space. The enemy was certain they had won. They had never heard of Earth. They had never been told to fear it. They did not know about the warning. Lyanna thought that was their first and possibly last mistake. As Azrath launched from the tower, his wings caught the burning air. The dragon flew up toward the stars with Lyanna holding tight to his scales. She looked back one final time at Velrythia. Her home world was beautiful even while dying. The forests glowed orange with fire, and the oceans reflected the explosions in the sky. She had been born here 500 years ago. She had learned magic here, and fought her first battle here, and fallen in love here. Now it was all turning to ash and memory. The evacuation fleet formed up around her flagship as they prepared to jump to hyperspace. 40,000 souls were all that remained of a civilization that had lasted 50 millennia, but Lyanna refused to give up hope. Somewhere out there was Earth. Somewhere out there were humans who might still be alive, and somewhere in the ancient warning was a truth that could save them all. The stars stretched into lines of light as the fleet entered hyperspace. Behind them, the Krethok followed hungry for the final kill. They would chase the elves across the galaxy to Earth, and there they would learn why the Ancient One had given that single warning: never underestimate Earth. Lyanna held on to that thought as her world disappeared behind them forever. She held on to hope, even though everything seemed hopeless, because that was what survivors did. They kept going, even when logic said to quit. They believed in impossible things because sometimes impossible things were real. The journey would take 3 weeks. Many would die along the way, but those who survived would reach Earth, and then they would discover the truth about humanity. Then they would learn what happened when you gave humans 700 years to prepare. Then the Krethok would understand the meaning of fear. Lyanna closed her eyes and felt Azrath's strength flowing through their bond. Together they flew toward an unknown future. Together they carried the last hope of their people. Together they would find out if the ancient warning was a promise or just empty words. The blue world waited somewhere ahead in the darkness, and with it, the answer to everything. 3 weeks passed in hyperspace, and it felt like both forever and no time at all. Lyanna watched as more ships fell behind every day because their engines were breaking down or their crews were dying from wounds that magic could not heal. They started with 1,000,000 people fleeing from Velrythia. Now only 40,000 remained alive when the fleet finally dropped back into normal space at the edge of the Sol system. Lyanna stood on the bridge of her flagship with Azrath coiled nearby and stared at what she saw. The system was wrong in ways that made no sense. Every old database said Sewell had 9 planets and was a boring backwater system. The only interesting thing was the third planet with its liquid water and strange carbon-based life. But what Liana saw now was completely different from those records. Between the 4th and 5th planets was an asteroid belt. That belt had been transformed into structures that stretched for millions of kilometers. Entire asteroids had been hollowed out and connected by thin threads that looked like spider webs made of metal. Giant panels bigger than moons floated near the sun itself, drinking its light. Everything had power running through it, but there were no people anywhere. Liana turned to Kestrel, her tactical officer. His face had scars from their losing war, and his hands shook as he worked his controls. Commander, I am reading power everywhere, but no life signs at all. The structures are active, but there are no biological readings and no ships and no transmissions. It is like they built all of this and then disappeared into nothing. Azrath rumbled deep in his chest. Or they are hiding from us and waiting to see what we do. The fleet moved deeper into the system, passing the 4th planet. That world was called Mars. According to the old records, it was supposed to be a dead desert planet with red sand and no atmosphere. But now Mars showed signs of massive construction projects that had been started and then abandoned. The northern half of the planet looked like someone tried to create an ocean there. The water had frozen solid, but the engineering was impressive and terrifying. Someone had tried to change an entire planet and then just stopped. Kestrel's voice broke through her thoughts. Commander, the Krethok just entered the system behind us. 53 bioships are coming fast, and they have locked onto our position. Liana nodded because she had expected this. She had led the enemy here on purpose after all. Continue toward Earth at full speed. As they got closer, the 3rd planet grew larger in their view screens. Earth was beautiful in a way that made Liana chest hurt. Blue oceans covered most of the surface, and clouds swirled in white patterns. Continents spread across the water in browns and greens, and everywhere she looked, there were lights. Cities still glowed with power. Atmospheric processors hummed with activity. Power grids stretched across entire continents. But Kestrel was right. There were no people and no animals and no plants except basic algae. The whole biosphere had just stopped existing except for the machines that kept running. Liana felt Azrath's confusion mixing with her own through their bond. The dragon shared a memory from 15,000 years ago when one of his ancestors flew over Earth. Back then, humans were primitive and painted on cave walls and worshipped fire. Even then, the Ancient One had warned dragons to stay away from that world. "This is wrong," Azrath said in her mind. "We should leave this place immediately before something terrible happens." Before Liana could respond, Kestrel shouted from his station, "Incoming transmission from Earth surface audio." Only static filled the bridge and then cleared into a voice. The voice was young and female and spoke in Galactic Common with a heavy accent. "Refugee Fleet, this is Luna Station Control. We have been monitoring your approach for the past 3 weeks. We know you are running from the Krethok invasion force. We know because we have been watching them eat the galaxy for 700 years while we prepared." Liana gripped the railing in front of her so hard her knuckles turned white. "This is Commander Liana Silver Moon of the Velrithian Federation. To whom am I speaking?" There was a pause that lasted several heartbeats. When the voice came back, it sounded amused in a dark way. "My name is Katie Morris. I am 15 years old, and I am one of the last humans. Alive." The words hung in the air like ice. Liana felt her stomach drop as understanding began to dawn. The Krethok came here first. 700 years ago. They came to Earth before they attacked anyone else. Katie's voice confirmed what Liana was thinking. "You are correct, Commander. They came expecting easy prey because we had barely left our own planet. We had small colonies on our moon and Mars, and that was all. They thought we would die quickly and easily." The girl laughed, but there was no happiness in the sound. They were right about that part. The Krethok killed 7 billion people in the first week of invasion. My ancestors watched Earth burn from bunkers deep underground and from stations in orbit. They watched everyone they loved turn to ash and dust. Then how are you still here? Liana asked. How did you survive when 7 billion others died? Because humans are vindictive. Katie replied, we could not win the war, so we did something worse. Our scientists had been working on technology to upload human consciousness into computers. It was considered unethical and dangerous, and most people opposed it. But when the Krethok killed everyone we loved, all ethics became meaningless. We pressed the button and began the upload process. Liana's eyes went wide as she looked at the empty cities and active infrastructure. You are not biological anymore. You uploaded your minds into the machines. We have not been flesh and blood for 700 years. Katie confirmed. It took about 50 years for the last biological humans to die naturally after the Krethok left. They assumed they had won and moved on to easier targets. The last of us uploaded our consciousness into quantum computers that we backed up across the entire solar system. We are the cities now. Commander, we are the network and the power grids and the machines. Every grain of sand on Earth beaches runs processing power. Every drop of ocean water carries nanomachines that think. We turned our entire world into one giant computer, and then we waited. Azrath spoke up with his voice rumbling across the communication channel. You waited for what? For 700 years. What were you waiting for? Katie's answer was immediate and cold. We waited for them to come back, and we waited for someone desperate enough to lead them here. Before Liana could respond, alarms screamed across the bridge. The Krethok fleet had entered orbit and was spreading out like a disease. Their bioships were launching pods toward the refugee ships. Liana turned back to the communication channel. Katie, if you can help us, please do it now. My people are dying. I know you brought them here deliberately, Katie said. I know you gambled everything on the Ancient One warning, meaning something real. I know you have 40,000 terrified people who just want to live. There was another pause. Here is what will happen next. You will break orbit immediately and fly toward the moon. There are old United Nations bunkers there that we have kept maintained. Your people will be safe there. And what about the Krethok? Liana demanded. What happens to them? Katie's voice dropped low and became something terrible despite sounding so young. The Krethok are about to learn why the Ancient One gave that warning. They are about to discover what happens when you kill 7 billion humans and leave the survivors 700 years to plan revenge. On the main viewing screen, something changed. The clouds over Earth began to move in patterns that were not natural. The oceans started to glow with light that pulsed like a heartbeat. From the surface, from cities and mountains and deserts, pillars of light shot upward into space. Liana watched in awe and horror as the first Krethok bioship entered the atmosphere. The ship simply stopped existing. It did not explode or burn or crash. It was unmade at the atomic level by clouds of tiny machines that rose like metal fog. The Krethok screamed across every frequency. Their hive mind was experiencing something it had never felt before. Fear. What are you? Liana whispered. Katie's answer was simple and final. We are what happens when you underestimate Earth. We are not a species anymore. Commander, we are a weapon, and we have been waiting 700 years for someone to pull our trigger. Now get your people to safety, and watch what we do to your nightmares. More Krethok ships tried to escape, but space itself seemed to fight against them. Their engines failed, and their navigation stopped working, and their biological systems seized up. Silver clouds of nanomachines filled the space around Earth like a second atmosphere. Each microscopic machine was smart enough to work with billions of others. Together they could build anything or destroy anything or become anything. The sky turned silver with humanity wrath. Welcome to Earth, Katie said as the slaughter began. Now run to the moon and let us show you what 700 years of human spite looks like." Lyanna ordered the fleet to retreat toward the moon. As they fled, she could not look away from Earth. The beautiful blue world had become something else. It had become a living weapon that humanity had built from their own bodies and minds. She understood now why the Ancient One had given that warning. Never underestimate Earth. Because humans who faced extinction did not just die quietly, they transformed themselves into something that could never die. They became digital gods wrapped in programmable matter. They became patient and vengeful and utterly terrifying. And they had been waiting 700 years for the Krethok to return. Lyanna realized she had not led her people to safety. She had led them to witness the birth of something new. Something that would change the galaxy forever. The war was not over. It was just beginning, and humanity had been preparing for it since before Lyanna was born. 3 months had passed since the battle, and Lyanna stood in what used to be a rainforest on Earth. She watched something impossible happening in front of her eyes. Trees were growing, but not in any normal way. They rose from the soil like magic was pushing them upward at incredible speed. Within hours, a bare clearing became a young forest. Within days, that forest would be fully mature with birds and insects and animals living in it. Katie had explained that normal plant growth was too slow for humanity's restored patience. Instead, billions of tiny nanomachines assembled the trees, molecule by molecule, with atomic precision. It was technology so advanced, it looked like magic. Azrath lay in a special clearing nearby, watching the forest grow. The dragon had spent his days here, remembering worlds that had died long ago. "It is strange," he said to Lyanna through their bond. "They have the power to build anything they want, yet they choose to rebuild what they lost. Is that not what any of us would do?" Lyanna replied while touching the bark of a tree. The wood was real, but also too perfect. Inside the cells were monitoring systems made of nanomachines woven through the organic material. A young woman approached, and her form flickered slightly. Katie had explained that uploaded humans could build bodies from programmable matter. These bodies were made of gray goo, shaped to look human with simulated senses that felt real. Katie's teenage face showed concern as she walked closer. "Commander, we finished analyzing the data from your archives back on Velrithia. You need to see what we found." They walked together to a research building that looked like a grove of trees, but held more computing power than the entire Elven Federation ever possessed. Inside were holographic displays showing images that made Lyanna stop breathing. Star maps floated in the air showing the galaxy millions of years ago, when the Ancient Ones still lived. "We have been comparing your historical records with our archaeological finds." Katie explained. "The pattern is disturbing." Another voice joined them. This one was older and male and identified itself as Marcus Chen. Marcus was one of the original minds from the first upload generation 700 years ago. The Ancient Ones did not just disappear. Marcus said they were methodical about leaving over 50,000 years. They systematically abandoned every world they had seeded with life. They left ruins and genetic markers in the species they created, but never explained why. Until now, Lyanna whispered as she saw the pattern forming. Until now, Katie confirmed. "We found something in your DNA, Commander. Something we missed in our own genetics because we had already uploaded before we thought to look. The Ancient Ones did not just create you, they programmed you." Azrath raised his massive head with golden eyes, narrowing. "Programmed us for what purpose?" The display showed complex genetic sequences that looked more like computer code than natural evolution. They programmed every species they created to reach a specific milestone. Katie explained. "For humans, it was splitting the atom. Once we achieved nuclear fission, something in our DNA activated. A genetic memory or quantum entanglement with something beyond our understanding. It made us dream of space and desperate to explore and become more than we were." The upload, Lyanna realized the Krethok invasion triggered it, but you were... Already moving toward that transformation, exactly, Marcus agreed. And we found similar markers in elven genetics and dragon DNA and every elder species the Ancient Ones created. Each one has a different trigger and different milestone that activates something buried deep in your genes. What does it activate? Azrath demanded with urgency. Katie's expression went carefully neutral. We do not know yet, but we discovered something else. The Krethok do not have those genetic markers. They are not an Ancient One creation. They are something completely different. The display changed to show Krethok biology at the cellular level. Their structure was biological, but wrong. Too efficient and too perfect, and too obviously designed, rather than evolved. They are a weapon, Liana said softly. Someone made them on purpose. Someone is still making them. Marcus corrected. We analyzed the converted Krethok ships in orbit. Their genetic memory only goes back 5,000 years. Before that, there is nothing. They did not evolve naturally. They were created wholesale and aimed at the galaxy like a loaded gun. But why, Katie asked with frustration in her young voice, why create a species whose only purpose is consuming and destroying? Why target the Ancient Ones, children specifically? Azrath stirred as ancient memories rose in his mind. Through the bond, Liana felt those memories, because the Ancient Ones left something behind in us. In all their creations, they seeded not just life but potential. Each species carries a piece of something larger. A defense system, Liana breathed as understanding flooded through her. They turned their children into a galaxy-wide immune system. When the Krethok attack and push us to extinction, we activate and transform. Like humans did. Katie said we were dying, so we transcended into something that could fight back. But there are hundreds of species the Ancient Ones created. Marcus pointed out, humans hit your trigger first, because the Krethok attacked you first. What happens when other species activate and transform? What happens when every Ancient One creation becomes something more? The implications were terrifying. Liana thought about all the civilizations fighting the Krethok across the galaxy. Each one carried hidden programming waiting to activate. Each one would transform in their own unique way when pushed hard enough. We need to warn them, she said firmly. Every species fighting the Krethok needs to know that extinction is not the end. It is a catalyst for transformation. Warn them of what? Exactly, Katie asked. That if they die, they might evolve. That is not comforting news. Warn them they have a choice, Liana corrected. Humans chose to upload and become digital, but that is not the only path available. The Ancient Ones programmed potential, not destiny. Each species will transform in their own way when threatened. Azrath rumbled deep in his chest. You think we can control this transformation, choose what we become? Instead of letting desperation decide for us, I think we have to try. Liana said with conviction, because the alternative is letting the Krethok push every species into a corner. Either they die or become something monstrous in self-defense. Neither option is acceptable. Katie and Marcus exchanged a glance that required no words, just a flash of communication across their shared network, faster than thought. There is one more thing, Katie said finally. We have been monitoring deep space looking for the Krethok homeworld. We found something strange near the galactic core, a region about 27,000 light-years from here. There are no stars and no radiation and nothing. Our instruments say matter exists there, but something is cloaking an entire sector of space. That is where they come from. Liana said with absolute certainty, that is where we need to go eventually. Are you insane? Marcus demanded. Commander, we spent 700 years building a defense. We can protect Sol system indefinitely. You want to go on offense against an enemy we do not understand? To a region of space we can barely detect? I am talking about finishing what the Ancient Ones started. Liana countered. They created us for a reason. Humans evolved into digital consciousness. Dragons carry genetic memories spanning millions of years. Elves live for millennia, accumulating wisdom. Each species has a role and a piece of the puzzle. You want to unite the galaxy, Katie said with wonder and fear mixing in her voice. I want to give them hope. Liana replied, right now. Every species is dying alone, thinking they face an unstoppable enemy. But if they knew the truth, if they knew they were created to fight back, if they knew extinction is transformation, if they knew humanity already won, they might fight differently. Azrath finished as understanding dawned. They might cooperate and share knowledge, they might accelerate their own activation, and they might become worse than the Krethok. Marcus warned. We became what we are out of desperation. We had time to think and debate and choose carefully. Other species might not be so fortunate or wise. Liana met Katie eyes across the divide between biological and digital existence. Then we teach them, she said. We show them what it means to transform without losing your soul. We help them choose who they want to become. Katie smiled, and for the first time it looked completely genuine. When you arrived, I thought we were saving you. But maybe you are saving us instead, giving us a purpose beyond waiting and watching. We save each other. Liana said simply. That is what the Ancient Ones wanted. Not gods or victims, but partners, children of different worlds working together. Azrath spread his wings, blocking out the artificial sun above. Then let us wake the galaxy. Let us show them what happens when you underestimate any of the Ancient One's children. Earth first, Katie said with the weight of collective humanity in her voice, then the galaxy, and finally that void near the core. We will find whoever made the Krethok. We will teach them the lesson we taught their weapons. What lesson is that? Liana asked Katie. Smile turned sharp and dangerous. That the Ancient One gave a warning for a reason. That reason is standing here, 700 years of human determination, wrapped in programmable matter, allied with magic-wielding elves and telepathic dragons. Never underestimate Earth, but also never underestimate what we become when you give us friends worth fighting for. Liana felt tears in her eyes for the first time since fleeing her homeworld. Around her, the forest continued growing, life returning to a world that had been empty for centuries. She realized this was just the beginning. The galaxy was about to wake up, and when it did, the Krethok would learn that they had made a terrible mistake. They had assumed the Ancient One's children were prey. They were wrong. The children were weapons, and they were about to activate all at once. 18 months had passed since the battle, and now a fleet was leaving the Sol system. This fleet looked nothing like the desperate refugee ships that had arrived. Humanity had rebuilt each elven vessel at the molecular level. The ships were now hybrid creations that mixed machine and magic in impossible ways. They could grow and adapt and think, not with full consciousness like uploaded humans, but with enough awareness to anticipate crew needs. Liana commanded from the bridge of the Starweaver. Her old flagship had been transformed into something far stranger than before. The walls were made of living metal that pulsed gently with integrated nanomachines, holographic displays mixed with ancient elven scrying pools. Technology and sorcery had merged into something new. Azrath occupied a special chamber that opened directly to space. The dragon no longer needed air to breathe. His body had been enhanced with selective nanite integration. He could survive in vacuum while keeping his essential dragon nature intact. Through their bond, Liana felt his excitement mixed with ancient dread. They were approaching the void Katie had discovered near the galactic core. The closer they came, the more Azrath instincts screamed warnings. Status report, Liana commanded. Kestrel worked his console with fingers that flickered between flesh and digital projection. He had been experimenting with partial uploading. His body existed in multiple states at once. 12 ships and 40,000 souls. Commander, 20,000 biological elves, 15,000 uploaded humans in mobile platforms, 5,000 dragons and other species. We are 3 million kilometers from the void edge. And the rest of the galaxy? Liana asked Katie. Voice came from everywhere and nowhere at once. It was as natural in the ship as it had been in the forest back on Earth. The message is spreading across known space. 23 species have confirmed receiving the awakening protocols. 12 have already begun their transformations. She paused, and Liana heard sadness in the young voice. It is chaos, Commander. Some species are embracing the change. Others are fighting against it with everything they have. The Krethok are adapting, too. They focus on worlds closest to transformation, trying to destroy them before activation. Completes casualties, Liana asked quietly. 4 billion in the last month alone. Marcus replied. His voice carried the weight of watching civilizations die, but also 3 species successfully transformed. The Valyrians became collective water-based consciousness. The Thornak split into millions of microscopic units sharing one group mind, the Crescenti. We are not sure what happened to the Crescenti. They seem to have vanished into higher dimensions of reality. Liana closed her eyes, feeling the weight of billions of dead souls. They had made this choice together, to wake the galaxy and force evolution on an impossible timescale. Some would survive the transformation, many would not. And the Krethok, she asked, still coming. Katie said, still consuming and spreading and destroying, but slower now. We think they are being recalled toward the D-core, toward the void where we are heading. Azrath's voice was dark as he spoke. So we fly directly toward where the enemy is gathering. The view screen shifted, showing what waited ahead. At first it looked like empty space. A spherical region about 50 light-years across, where stars should exist, but did not. As they approached, reality itself seemed to bend at the boundary. We are detecting gravitational problems, Kestrel reported. Quantum fluctuations that make no sense. And something else. There is a pattern in the distortions, like code written into the fabric of space-time itself. The Ancient Ones, Liana breathed. This is their doing. No, a new voice spoke, and everyone on the bridge froze. It was not human or elven or digital. It was something far older, and it spoke directly into their minds. This is our cage. The Ancient Ones built it. As a prison, after they could not destroy us, and you have come to free us. The void itself was speaking. Through the view screen, darkness took on form. Not physical form, but patterns of absence, entities made from negation rather than matter. They were anti-life and anti-thought. Liana understood with horror that the Krethok were not the real enemy. They were defenders trying to stop anyone from reaching this place. Who are you? Katie demanded. Her voice carried the full weight of 800 million uploaded minds. We are the predecessors. The void things replied. We existed before the Ancient Ones, before time had meaning, before the laws of physics became fixed. We shaped primordial chaos and made reality itself. The Ancient Ones. Your creators feared what we would make of their ordered universe. Images flooded the bridge. Memories from before time, when the cosmos was still changing and fluid. The predecessors had been reality, first conscious thoughts. Entities that reshaped fundamental constants of existence through will alone. They had sculpted galaxies from quantum foam. They had lit stars with purposes beyond mere fusion. They had created forms of matter that should not exist. You were gods, Marcus whispered. We were reality immune system fighting the disease of stagnation, the predecessors corrected. The Ancient Ones wanted a static universe. One that followed rules and could be predicted and controlled. They opposed us, and war raged for eons. Neither side could destroy the other, so they settled for imprisonment. They built this cage from dead stars and bound us here, locked outside normal space-time. And the Krethok Liana asked though she already knew our children. The predecessors said with something like sorrow, our weapons created in desperation, our attempt to reach any species powerful enough to break our bonds, We made them to attack the Ancient One's inheritors, to push them toward transformation, to force them to become powerful enough to either destroy us or free us. It was a gamble, a prayer thrown across millions of years. You are insane, Katie said flatly. You created a genocidal species just to get attention. We are dying, the predecessors replied. Trapped here, cut off from reality. We have been fading for millions of years. The Ancient Ones thought they were containing a threat. Instead, they were starving the universe itself. Without us to shake the foundations, reality grows brittle, entropy accelerates, the cosmos calcifies toward heat death faster than it should. Azrath spoke with certainty in his ancient voice. You are telling the truth. I feel it in my bones. In memories older than my species, the universe is dying, not from the Krethok, but from too much order. So what do you want from us? Liana demanded. You killed billions, destroyed countless civilizations, gave us 700 years of nightmares for what purpose? So we would come here and set you free. No, the predecessors said. Their void forms shifted into patterns that might have been resignation. We want you to choose. The Ancient Ones program their children to activate when threatened with extinction. Each transformation weakens the bonds of our cage. When enough species awaken, the prison will fail automatically, and then you will reshape reality according to your desires. Katie accused. Make the universe fluid and chaotic again. Undo everything the Ancient Ones built. We will restore balance, the predecessors corrected. Yes, we will reshape reality, but not destroy it. The universe needs both forces, order and chaos, stability and change, entropy and negentropy. The Ancient Ones understood this once. That is why they created so many species with different potentials. They intended for their children to become mediators, bridges between extremes, until they grew afraid and locked you away. Marcus said, fear corrupts even the wisest beings. The predecessors agreed. They saw what we could do and assumed we would unmake their work, so they imprisoned us and left you to guard our cage. Without even knowing what you guarded, Liana looked around her bridge, at elves whose bodies mixed biology with digital enhancement, at uploaded humans who chose consciousness over death, at dragons carrying genetic memories from the universe's first days. They were exactly what the Ancient Ones intended. Hybrid beings capable of understanding both order and chaos. You want us to choose whether to free you? She said slowly. But it is not really a choice. If we refuse, the Krethok keeps spreading. Eventually enough species transform anyway. The cage breaks automatically. If we agree, you are freed on our terms under our conditions. Precisely, the predecessors said with approval. You have grown wise, daughter of the Ancient Ones. Wise enough to see the trap within the trap. Free us now, and you might shape what comes after. Wait for natural cage failure, and we emerge confused and dangerous. Or we could destroy you, Katie suggested. Turn transformed humanity power against this prison collapse, the void on itself. You could try the predecessors. Agreed, though doing so would likely collapse this entire sector. Kill trillions, and you would still face the same problem. Reality is dying from too much order. Without us to maintain balance, the universe has perhaps 50 million years before heat death becomes inevitable. 50 million years seemed like forever to species that lived in millennia. To entities existing since before time, it was less than a heartbeat. We need to deliberate, Liana said firmly. This affects every species in the galaxy. We cannot make this choice alone. Take your time, the predecessors said, fading back into pure void. We have waited millions of years. We can wait months more. But know this, the Krethok will not stop. They are programmed to push and challenge and force transformation. That is their purpose, and they cannot be reasoned with. Only by resolving our imprisonment can you end the war. The presence withdrew, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. Well, Katie said eventually. Her teenage voice was incongruously small after such cosmic revelations. That was not what I expected. What did you expect? Azrath rumbled, I do not know. A superweapon, perhaps, an evil overlord we could blow up and feel good about. Katie laughed bitterly. Not a philosophical debate about reality nature with entities older than physics. Liana turned to face her crew. Send the message. Everything we learned here, every species and every transformed consciousness and every survivor needs to know the truth. Then we put it to a vote. A galactic referendum, Kestrel said with disbelief. On whether to free potentially reality-destroying entities, democracy at its finest, Marcus commented dryly. It is the only way, Liana insisted. The Ancient Ones tried to make this choice for everyone. Look where it got us. A million-year war by proxy. We will not repeat their mistake. Every thinking being gets a voice, biological or digital, mortal or transcendent. Everyone chooses together, and if they choose wrong, Azrath asked. Then at least it will be our mistake, Liana said. Our choice, not one forced on us by absent creators. She looked at the void, at the prison shaping galactic history for eons. We take 6 months. Give everyone time to debate and understand and decide. Then we either free the predecessors under conditions we set, or we find another way to restore balance. What if there is no other way? Katie asked quietly. Then we make one, Liana replied with fierce certainty. That is what the Ancient Ones really programmed into us, not just transformation. Ability, but stubborn refusal to accept helplessness. Humans proved that by becoming digital gods rather than dying. Now the whole galaxy proves it by choosing our destiny. She turned back to the view screen, to the impossible void holding the universe, oldest prisoners. The Ancient One gave a warning to never underestimate Earth. But there was a second warning. They should have given themselves. Never underestimate any species when you give them power to choose. We will see you in 6 months, predecessors. When we return, we will have an answer, one you might not like, but one that will be ours, freely given. The void pulsed once, with acknowledgement and respect and perhaps even hope. The Star Weaver turned away, carrying a message that would reshape everything. Not through war or force or fear, but through the simple, terrifying, beautiful act of letting every conscious being vote on reality. Future Katie spoke quietly, meant only for Liana. Do you think we will choose wisely? Liana thought of Earth and humanity, 700-year vigil of species transforming across the galaxy, of dragons and elves working together, of impossible alliances. I think we will choose honestly, she replied. Maybe that is all the Ancient Ones really wanted. Not perfect children, but honest ones. Beings who face impossible choices without flinching. Never underestimate Earth, Katie quoted softly. Never underestimate anyone, Liana corrected. That is the real lesson here. 6 months passed like a held breath across the entire galaxy. Every species that could think was debating the choice. Biological beings argued in council chambers, while uploaded consciousness discussed at light speed. Dragons shared genetic memories, while elves consulted ancient texts. Humanity processed trillions of scenarios through quantum computers. The question was simple, but the implications were infinite. Should they free the predecessors from their prison, or should they find another way to save reality from slow death? Liana spent those months traveling between transformed worlds. She witnessed species she had never imagined becoming things beyond description. The Morvathi had merged with their planet ocean, becoming a thinking sea. The Drell had uploaded into crystalline matrices that sang with mathematical precision. The Korthan had split their consciousness across millions of simple organisms. Each transformation was unique and beautiful and sometimes terrifying. But every species agreed on one thing. The choice had to be made together or not at all. When the 6 months ended, Liana returned to the void. Her fleet had grown. Now 50 ships accompanied her, carrying representatives from 40 different species. Some were biological, some were digital, some were things that defied easy categorization. They gathered at the edge of the void and opened a communication channel. The predecessors manifested as patterns of darkness against the stars. Their ancient presence filled every mind in the fleet. "Have you decided?" they asked. "We have decided," Liana replied. Her voice carried the weight of trillions of beings across the galaxy. "We will free you from your prison, but not without conditions." The void rippled with surprise and perhaps relief. "Name your conditions." First, Liana said, "You will restore balance to reality, but you will not remake it in your image alone. The Ancient One's children will work with you as partners, not servants and not obstacles, but equals." Second, Katie added, speaking for transformed humanity, "You will never create weapons like the Krethok again. No species should be born only to destroy. No consciousness should exist only to serve another purpose. If you need defenders or helpers, you will ask, and we will choose whether to assist." Third, Marcus said, "You will teach us what you know about reality, fundamental nature. We will teach you what we learned about consciousness and choice and cooperation. Knowledge will flow both directions." Fourth came Azrath, deep rumbling voice. "You will remember what it means to be imprisoned and powerless. That memory will temper your actions so you never become what the Ancient Ones feared." A dozen other voices added their own conditions. The Morvathi demanded protection for young civilizations. The Drell insisted on preserving mathematical beauty in physical laws. The Korthan required space for simple life to exist without interference. Each species contributed wisdom from their unique perspective. The predecessors listened to every demand without interruption. When the last condition was spoken, they were silent for a long time. "These terms are acceptable." They finally said, "You have surprised us, children of the Ancient Ones. We expected you to choose destruction or freedom without strings. Instead, you chose partnership with boundaries. You have grown beyond what your creators intended. That is good, because what comes next requires wisdom they never possessed." "What comes next?" Liana asked. The predecessors' forms shifted and changed. For the first time, they seemed almost hesitant. "When we are freed, reality will undergo transformation. Nothing will be destroyed, but everything will become more fluid. Physical laws will retain their structure but gain flexibility. Consciousness will be able to shape matter in ways currently impossible. Magic and science will merge completely. Time itself will become less rigid. Some beings will find this terrifying." Azrath observed, "Change always terrifies those who benefit from current order." Katie added, "But stagnation kills everything, eventually." Marcus spoke with the weight of human experience. "We chose to upload rather than die. We chose transformation over extinction. We understand that survival sometimes means becoming something new. The galaxy has voted. The predecessors said 73% chose to free us under the conditions you specified. 20% wanted to wait and study more. 7% wanted to destroy us and take their chances with dying reality." "Democracy is messy," Liana acknowledged. "But it is better than one species or entity deciding for everyone. We are ready. Show us how to break the prison." The process was surprisingly simple. The Ancient Ones had built the cage from laws of physics themselves. They had frozen space-time into rigid patterns around the predecessors. To break it required only enough transformed consciousness focusing, will in the same direction. Every uploaded human turned their processing power toward the task. Every awakened species added their unique abilities. Dragons channeled genetic memory. Elves wove ancient spells. The Morvathi sang in frequencies that resonated with quantum foam. The Drell calculated probability matrices. The Korthan provided raw determination multiplied across millions of simple minds. Reality screamed, not with sound but with fundamental wrongness as unchangeable laws suddenly changed. The void, prison cracked like frozen glass under pressure. Light poured through gaps that should not exist. The predecessors emerged slowly, carefully, like beings remembering how to exist in normal space. They were beautiful and terrible. Part matter and part energy and part pure mathematics. They moved through dimensions most species could not perceive. Where they passed, reality became more alive. Stars burned brighter with new purposes. Planets developed properties they never had before. Empty space filled with potential waiting to become something. "Is this safe?" Kestrel asked nervously. His form flickered faster as stress affected his partial upload. "Nothing is safe," Katie replied, "but it is better than the alternative." The predecessors spread across the galaxy, but they did not rampage or destroy. Instead, they began the work of restoration. Regions of space that had grown cold and dead suddenly bloomed with energy. Physical constants that had been slowly drifting toward chaos stabilized. Entropy slowed its relentless march toward heat death. They were keeping their promise, restoring balance without imposing their will. One predecessor approached the fleet. It took a form that resembled a cloud of stars mixed with geometric patterns. "You have given us freedom." It said, "We will honor the conditions you set. But know this. What you accomplished here is greater than saving us or reality. You proved that different forms of consciousness can cooperate, that biological and digital and energy beings can work together, that democracy functions even on cosmic scales. The ancient ones failed because they tried to control everything. You succeeded because you chose to trust each other." Liana felt tears on her face. Around her, the bridge crew was celebrating. Azrath sent waves of joy and relief through their bond. In the distance, Earth glowed blue and beautiful, humanity homeworld that had become a weapon and then chosen to be something more. Katie's voice was soft when she spoke. "So what now, Commander? Do we go home and rebuild? Do we explore this new fluid reality? Do we help other species navigate the changes?" Liana smiled. "We do all of that and more. We become what the ancient ones should have been. Not controllers or prisoners, but gardeners. We help young civilizations grow. We protect those who need protection. We explore and learn and share knowledge, and we never forget what almost happened." The galaxy had come within 50 million years of dying. The predecessors had been imprisoned for eons. The Krethok had killed billions before anyone understood they were a distress signal, all because the Ancient Ones chose fear over trust. Liana would not repeat that mistake. The message went out across every communication channel, to every world and every ship and every consciousness. The prison is broken, balance is restored. The Krethok will cease their attacks as their purpose is fulfilled. The war is over. Now begins the work of building something better, not a galaxy ruled by one species' vision, but a community where everyone contributes, where biological and digital beings are equals, where magic and science are two sides of the same coin, where young civilizations are mentored instead of conquered, where mistakes are lessons instead of tragedies. Azrath spread his wings wide. "So we become gardeners," the dragon said. "After being warriors for so long, it will be strange. Strange, but good." Liana agreed. She looked at Katie, whose teenage form represented humanity, collective determination, at Marcus, whose ancient wisdom spanned 700 years, at Kestrel, who bridged biological and digital existence, at the predecessors who were learning to exist in partnership instead of isolation. The Ancient One gave a single warning. Liana said, "Never underestimate Earth." But they should have given a second warning to themselves. Never underestimate what happens when you give beings freedom to choose. Humans chose to become digital rather than die. The galaxy chose to free ancient prisoners rather than play it safe. And now we all choose to build something new together. That is the real lesson. Not about Earth specifically, but about all conscious beings. When given freedom and knowledge and trust, we choose cooperation over domination. We choose growth over stagnation. We choose hope over fear. Katie smiled. Her expression carried the weight of 800 million minds. Never underestimate Earth, she agreed, but also never underestimate anyone because we are all capable of surprising ourselves. The fleet turned toward home, toward Earth where forests grew and oceans teemed with nanomachine life, toward Velrithia, which could now be rebuilt with help from transformed humanity, toward 1,000 worlds that would benefit from restored balance. Behind them, the predecessors continued their work. Ahead lay infinite possibility, and everywhere beings who had once fought for survival now worked together to build something unprecedented, a galaxy where different forms of existence cooperated, where ancient wisdom mixed with new perspectives, where no one species dominated, where everyone had voice and choice and hope. Liana stood on her bridge looking at stars that burned brighter than before. She thought about the refugees who had fled here 18 months ago, 40,000 souls desperate and dying. Now they were part of something larger, part of a movement that had saved reality itself. The Ancient Ones had seeded the galaxy with potential. That potential had finally awakened, not just in humans or elves or dragons, but in every species they created. The war was over, the real work was beginning, and Liana could not wait to see what they would build together. Never underestimate Earth, she whispered. Never underestimate anyone, because we are all children of the Ancient Ones, and we have finally grown up.